Sorry it's a little bit late, but here is the Hall of Trials video for Archdemon Mercedes. Archdemon Mercedes is a relatively easy fight. For this one, we need to bring a unit who can provide silence, provoke, or reverse provoke to get the extra damage. Also, having a knight on the team gives us a 30% bonus to attack and health, which is great because a lot of knights offer the above debuffs. And fire units are punished by a 50% reduction to speed. That really doesn't impact us much here. So on this team, I'm taking Sirmia, and I built her with as much damage as I could. And yes, a rage set would probably be a little bit better, but I only had so many rage sets to go around. You want her on her S1 EE for that chance to proc a double hit, and the Hall of Trials artifact is a good damage artifact for her. For a second damage unit, I went with Malim. Malim is great for this fight because she self-heals on her S1, she self-attack buffs, Dragon Buster is wonderful extra damage, and Caladra gives you the same damage bonus as the Hall of Trials artifact as long as debuff is present, so it let me double up on my damage artifacts. Charles will be my knight for this team because he's the highest damage knight. Again, I stacked a rage set on him. No real good DPS artifacts for Charles, so I went ahead and gave him Symbol of Unity. It was the best damage artifact I could find. And you want him on his EE, that gives you that extra chance to do a double hit off his S1. And I'm using Conqueror Lilius as my lead, and here's the secret tech. Put her on Indestructible Gators or Junkyard Dog or some artifact, some warrior artifact that gives debuffs. Because if you have more than 2 debuffs on Mercedes, you get a secret bonus to your damage. It's not mentioned anywhere in the tooltips, but it's there. So if this happens, if Mercedes stuns one of your slowed fire units, just restart. It's too much of a pain in the butt. It's okay if she stuns Charles or Lilius, you can probably push through that. Here she stunned Lilius, but that's okay, because Lilius is so darn fast she'll lap right out of it. So I wanted just to drop a little bit of damage into Mercedes so that I can one-hit push her into the next phase. Now I've just got to stall for time to let my slowed fire units catch up. So I'm going to be doing a lot of S1s and S2s into the just S1s into the ads, and all I'm doing here is stalling for time to get my fire units up so that they can activate their skills and receive the vigor buff. Still need to stall for a little bit more time here.
It's time to draw my sword.
Okay, so you don't want to use your Charles attack buff early, and I'll show you why here in a minute. So I'm just going to do my S1. If you do actually do enough damage to kill one of the ads, they don't die. They just get stunned, and then they come back to full health later. So you can only somewhat control them, not really kill them. So we are ready. Now, you know what? I'm going to do one more turn because I don't want Sirmia to do her skills and make the vigor buff wear off. So Sirmia's ready. I'm going to do my S2. That puts greater attack buff on her. Now you notice I got 2 rounds left on that skill. When I do this attack, I'm going to lose one of those rounds. So I only have a 1-turn gap left. I'm doing this into an ad because I'm not ready to push phase yet. Now I can use my S3, which puts vigor on everybody. And I'm going to save the S2 because I don't want it to wind up getting dispelled. I'm going to use it inside of the break phase to get my provoke. Now I'm going to use Charles to push phase, but I'm going to use his S3. His S3 is an attack buff to everybody, and if somebody has greater attack buff, it just adds to that. So you'll notice my greater attack buff on Sirmia went from 1 turn left to 2 turns left. So by stacking it like that, I actually get an extra turn out of my Sirmia. Now I put the provoke on Mercedes, and I've got 3 debuffs, so now I'm doing maximum possible damage, and that dual attack was really nice. I get a Dragon Buster off. If your Dragon Buster goes off in stage 1, maybe restart. You want to get a Dragon Buster off in the middle of this stage. It's a little bit of RNG, but anytime you get a chance to S3 on Malim, you take it because her S3 does almost 1,000,000 points of damage. And right now you're just really hoping that you dual attack on Sirmia like that for extra damage, or that you dual attack on Charles. Charles's dual attack actually does more damage than Malim. It does less damage than a dual attack from Sirmia, but both are, this is a really good setup. Now, if you don't have Malim or you don't have Sirmia, you can use other DPSs for those spots. You can even remove them. In fact, you can run this with just Lilius and Charles, or just you can give up the 30% bonus and run this with just Lilius and Sirmia. You could run this with Fire Lilius as your knight and Sirmia. If you use Fire Lilius as your dual attack unit, the other units have to be potato slow. I would recommend, for example, Fire Lilius and Malim, because Malim can keep healing herself. The whole reason that I'm using a 4-man team is I'm spreading around the damage a little bit. One of the changes to the Hall of Trials event was they made completion a 1 million point bonus. So you really want to try to push for the completion to help pad your score, to make sure you achieve the Dagger Sicar level. And taking 4 units instead of 2 when you've got no healers spreads the damage around enough that it can help you get that completion. So here I am deciding whether or not I'm ready to push phase yet, and because everybody is so hurt, I'm going to go ahead and do it.
Obey if you wish to live.
And that puts me inside the phase. Also, Malim's Dragon Buster was ready to go off. I wanted that to happen inside the break phase. So even though Sirmia's only got 1 turn left on her Gab, I went ahead and pulled the trigger and pushed us into the break phase so we could start racking up points. If you stall too long and you get too injured in that transition phase, you're going to have a really hard time completing the final phase. Oh, nice. So my Charles cut and his S3 was ready, so this is going to re-up the greater attack buff on Sirmia and give her 2 more turns on her Gab. So they say that the 50% slow to fire units is a bad thing, but it really kind of helps out in this fight. So I've already passed the 9 million point mark. You need 9 million score for Dagger Sicar, I believe, on Mercedes, and as you can see, we're blowing past that score pretty easily. So if you don't have the same high quality gear, that's okay, don't sweat it. You can run this team on lower gear. All you need is 9 million for completion. You don't need to get 14 million. A possible substitute for any of these units would be, you could run Luna would be a good option, because Luna has a really powerful S1 attacks, some RNG to it. You need to make sure, or you need to hope that she gets the 5-hit ones off, not the one or 2 or 3 or 4 hit ones off for extra points, but she's a good alternative. You could put Green Sid on the team. He does great damage and self buffs. He would be a good alternative. Hardest thing is speed tuning and getting used to the timing. I did have to do this run maybe 7 or 8 times to get used to how Charles interacted with Sirmia, etc. So this last phase, you just blast through it as quickly as possible. Outside of the break phase, you want to use Sirmia's S3. Her S3 does a lot of damage because it's got a built-in 30% defense penetration. That's utterly useless inside of the break phase where the enemy has no defense. So you never use the S3 inside the break phase, but in transition phases it's great. Pretty easy clear, walked out with almost 15 million points, and I'm pretty satisfied with a number 2 position behind this Wolf 16 guy who always beats me by at least 4 million points. I gotta have cracked gear. Anyway, I hope this video helps you with your Dagger Sicar missions, and if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments section. And if you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and maybe a subscribe. Have a great weekend.